Hey Valdosta, this is Let's Talk Valdosta with Shara and Marcus, and we are here today talking to Jeff from
Historic Preservation.
Historic Preservation. I almost said something else. I'm so sorry, Jeff. I know what you do.
That's all right.
And we have some good things coming up with your department, so we want to kind of talk about that. The Preservation Awards is the 14th annual, and I believe Marcus will have a couple other questions for you as well.
And I guess just to start off, for those people who don't really understand what historic preservation is or what you do for the city, can you give it a synopsis of what you do?
Well, as the preservation planner for the city, I have a few main responsibilities, one of which is overview and oversight of the historic district. And what that means is the historic district is about 2,000 parcels. It's bounded by Park Avenue in the north to Savannah Avenue in the south, West Street in the west, and North Troop to the east. And basically, those properties within those boundaries were designated in 1980 as the local historic district, and so basically things that happen there will be reviewed. Exterior projects, not interior renovations. The people that want to do plumbing or electrical work or whatever on the interior, that's all fine. That's just regular permitting process. But to preserve the historic character of a unique city like Valdosta, the kind of powers that be back then had deemed, after the Georgia legislature had passed the Historic Preservation Act in 1980, allowing municipalities to designate local areas historic districts, had decided that the properties in these areas were important enough to them that they wanted to have certain levels of regulation, basically a zoning overlay on top of the regular zoning. So exterior changes to properties there go through kind of another review cycle where they go before the Historic Preservation Commission, which is a group of 7 individuals who are volunteers that live in the city, review these cases, and generally most of them go through without a hitch. A lot of people are cognizant of what is required of these things. It's generally not a real cumbersome process or anything, but it's just a way to try to maintain the historic integrity of the district.
And typically people who are moving into the historic district realize they are doing so, and that there are certain regulations in those districts, whether it's here or another city, that I guess protects them and their historic property from being, and I don't want to say destroyed, but protects them from keeping that character of those neighborhoods, correct?
Yeah, I think a lot of people that want to buy in the historic district want to buy for that reason. They enjoy the historic atmosphere. They like the properties. They like the architecture. They like the identity of the district. They like its association with historic events and the history of the community and its development. And one thing, a big thing that kind of precipitated this stuff in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which really led to the historic district being established here, was a lot of residents in Valdosta were seeing the effects of urban renewal and what it was doing on a lot of properties, a lot of high-style big homes. You look at a street like North Patterson that used to have a lot of these buildings, and they were being demolished and removed for businesses and whatnot. And to have a short little quick story of how significant that was. The Crescent itself was slated for demolition to become a gas station, and that's kind of when a few people stepped up and said, I don't think that's a good idea, and they purchased it, and that was kind of the birthplace of preservation Of course, as a formal thing, it would take a few more decades before it would be formalized and codified by the state legislature and allow municipalities to establish their districts. But the effects of urban renewal and what people were seeing happen to their communities, they wanted another level of oversight.
And their history being gone, and I know this is not the same category, but I've visited Boston, Massachusetts, and there you have those Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. Paul Revere's. I had to remember the singing before. Paul Revere's house is in the middle of all of these new things, but that could have been destroyed if somebody didn't preserve it. I know we don't have a Paul Revere house here, but we have houses and buildings that mean a lot to the community here in Valdosta.
Yeah, we definitely do. I mean, the Crescent is just one of them. The Commerce Dalton House is another one. Barbara Pittman, which is the Chamber of Commerce building. Crestwood up on Eager Road, the Dasher High School down on South Side, the Carnegie Library. We have, I think it's 7 or 8 individual landmarks that are listed individually on the National Register. And then we have several historic districts. And of course, there's a difference between the local historic district and National Register districts. And just quickly, not to get too convoluted and confusing on it, but basically, National Register districts identify the significance of districts. Local districts protect them. They are a zoning layer, a regulatory mechanism.
Gotcha.
So there are advantages by being in the local historic district. There are some tax advantages, grant advantages, stuff like that. But regularly, it's the local historic district that offers the protection. That's where the commission would get involved as far as review of proposals.
And we're a city that's over 100 plus years old. Now, can other neighborhoods be added to the historic district or local or national registry in any way, form, or fashion?
Absolutely. In the last couple of years, I think the National Register, of course, this is across the entire country, has added 3,000 or 4,000 new properties. Now, locally, yes, there is a process to add. Whether we're expanding the boundaries of our local historic district, whether it is a separate district in and of itself, there are the procedures that are mapped out in state legislation and through our own preservation ordinance of how that would be done. And basically, to make a long story short, that area would be surveyed. So, a professional consultant would go in, they would basically review the area, take pictures, document all the properties that are in there, what is the level of historic significance, what is the integrity of all the properties, and that would be kind of the first step in mapping out the area for potential growth.
Okay. And I think Char's going to ask you a few questions about the Historic Preservation Awards that you have coming up.
Okay.
Well, the Preservation Awards started back in 2009, correct?
Our Preservation Awards in the city, yes. Okay. And we've had, I think, 46 awards since then, including, I think, we've had 7 Lifetime Achievement Awards.
Oh, wow. In the past 2 years, you guys didn't do it because of COVID and changing preservation planners. But now they're back. So what's the next steps for that?
Well, we had all of the applications were submitted by last Friday, and we got 6 properties have been nominated for a total of 9 awards. And we have some really good projects. So what will happen is I spent earlier today putting together the applications. There are some properties where I'm still going to need to get some additional photos. I will put together these packets. We have a committee of 5 volunteers. 3 of them are preservation commissioners. One of them is with the Heritage Foundation, and the other is with the Historical Society. So the 5 of us, or the 5 of them and staff will get together on Monday, a week from today, before the regularly scheduled preservation meeting. We'll review the applications, and we'll select them. The categories this year are outstanding achievement, distinguished merit, and I think the other one is stewardship. We didn't have an application for lifetime achievement, but that's something that you don't have every year, where you get a nominee for someone who has contributed that kind of caliber to preservation. But we've had several of them since 2009, and I'm sure we'll have another one, whether it's next year or soon after that.
Well, and I know you just went over the categories. Can you talk about some of maybe our past winners, so people can kind of picture what type of things you're looking at?
I wish I had brought the list of the past winners. Okay, so I know that some of for instance, the Lifetime Achievement Awards. I know that Donald Davis, the executive director and president of the Historical Society, won for Lifetime Achievement. The award is named for Harold Bennett, who was one of the original founders of the Preservation Commission back in 1980-81. Who else would be? I'm trying to remember who else. Albert Sloan, who did. I don't know did he do the Coleman Tally building?
Maybe don't recall.
Yeah, don't quote me on that. I don't know.
But he's been involved with a lot of properties.
With it, yes, and
particularly in downtown.
Yeah. And as far as individual properties, Coleman Tally, I know, won for outstanding achievement a few years back. The Crescent has won for stewardship, and basically that's just long-term preservation, care. I think everyone can kind of look at that and see, as old as that property is, and in the condition that it continues to be in, that they take the preservation seriously. Some of the other awards, and even it's not just the big high style buildings like the Crescent, but it's everyday residences. Several of those have been honored and recognized in the last few years, and these are considerable projects. People putting a lot of money into them, and they look good, and they've contributed to property value increases in some of these districts, and rehabbing some of these properties that may have been distressed at one point, this is it's important. It's important as a revitalization tool, but it's also important to hang on to the history and for continuity and for identity, for the city to hold on to its past and know from where it's come as a guide to where it's going.
Yeah, and if you just knock down every old building, you lose a certain character to your city. But I guess we celebrate historic preservation, if I remember correctly, the first week in May, or is it the entire month?
It's the entire month.
Okay.
It's been, and that's a national thing through the National Trust for Historic Preservation. This is actually the 50th year. It was the first year that they did it was 1973. So I just happened to be looking over the notes of the program earlier today, and I realized it's 50 years old. So
yeah.
And we have some other events that are scheduled. I know the Preservation Commission will be hosting an event on Friday, May 12th, on the steps of the Weisenbaker Wells Roberts House at 206 Wells Street. And this will be observance of Preservation Month.
Gotcha.
The mayor will be there, having signed a proclamation, recognizing the importance of preservation and what it contributes to the local community as far as revitalization and sustainability and social and history and all that. The staff, myself, we will also have information, pamphlets to give out, to distribute to the public. We'll have walking tours of some of our historic districts. We have driving tour information for some of the districts. And we'll also have some of, the large maps put up showing all our different historic districts. We have 6 of them here in Valdosta National Register districts. Of course, we have, as far as the state goes, we have a fairly large local historic district. 2,000 parcels is a fairly big one. So if people want to come down, they have any questions about preservation, we're more than happy to talk with them and give them some of the information. And
Well, Jeff, is there anything we've talked about or haven't talked about that we've missed that you want people to know about historic preservation, what you do here as a historic planner for the city of Valdosta? Is there anything we're missing here?
Well, I guess I don't know if necessarily missing. I just want the public to understand that, I think sometimes there's this misconception about preservation that it's, the police and they won't let you do anything. And that's really not the case. We work with people, and generally there are ways to get through this stuff. It's not a cumbersome process. It's not expensive. And minor projects, there is no fee at all. For cases that do go before the commission, there's a nominal fee. But this is not a thing to be really scared of, and it's out there to help protect the district for the benefit of everyone that lives there and owns property there. It's something that can benefit the district and all the residents.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for your time. I know you're a busy man, and we appreciate your time on the podcast. And we will be looking forward to seeing who wins this year, these awards. And just thank you for all that you do for the city of Valdosta.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed spending some time with you.
Let's Talk Valdosta is a presentation of the City of Valdosta's communications team. You can download this episode and previous episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow the City of Valdosta's social media accounts to learn about future episodes.